Hi, Rosie.
Oh,
Hi, we're live now. We're waiting a couple of minutes for people to show up. Hello, everybody. This is my dog, Rosie. You can stare at her while we wait for people to join our event. She was snapping at me that she wanted to sit on my lap, so here she is. Oh, falling asleep. Here, Rosie, you have to look at the camera. This is fascinating. This is fun.
yes.
Oh,
I just wish we could meet in person, but anyway.
Oh, you can see the participants at the bottom.
Can you?
Oh, it's just us, guys.
I think we have to be on YouTube to actually see.
Oh,
am I right?
I don't know. Oh, I guess this is participants in the Zoom chat.
There we go. Okay. We're gonna wait like maybe 1 or 2 more minutes for people to join our YouTube live event. Got my coffee. Also, I just realized there's so many stuffies around my desk. I don't.
I'm with Lindsay.
Weird.
You don't notice how much you have until you see it in a video.
Well, I decided not to bother arranging my bookcase so that it showed only like the intellectual books and, you know, not the murder mysteries and Agatha Christie's and things like that. So.
All books are honorable books.
They are.
Mm-hmm. Well, not all. I shouldn't say that. Okay, maybe 1 more minute waiting for people to come. Rosie is now staring at me like she wants something. I don't know what it is. Go away. Okay, so I think we're going to get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special event, celebration of Asian Canadian writing in BC with the Vancouver Writers Fest, and we're very happy to be here. To begin with, I'm just going to, I should just introduce our actual authors, the reason we are here. My name is actually Jen Sookfong Lee, and I'm your moderator / host / online guide today. And I'm so happy to welcome Janie Chang, David Lee, and Lindsay Wang to this super awesome Asian Heritage Month event. We're so happy to be here. And to begin with, the Vancouver Writers Fest would like to acknowledge that it carries out its work and this event today on the traditional, unceded, and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. The festival, and all of us here, are grateful to be able to work here on these lands, very cognizant of the history of this place and the reconciliation work that is still to come. Very grateful to be here. The Vancouver Writers Fest would also like to thank its government sponsors, the Government of Canada, the Government of BC, the British Columbia Arts Council, the City of Vancouver, and CMHC Granville Island. And the festival also encourages viewers to buy our authors' books and as many books from other people as you would like. You'll see links to various independent bookstores in the chat function. There are lots of independents in your community offering free local delivery. Some, such as kids' books, offer curbside pickup. So we encourage you to reach out to your favorite local bookstore to inquire about options. Before we really start going, I do want to just say that when Leslie Herdig, the director of the Vancouver Writers Fest, and I initially started talking about this event, it was as a response to anti-Asian racism that has been going on in Canada and throughout the world. And it would seem that given the events of the last couple of weeks in the United States and worldwide, that we can't keep going unless we acknowledge what's been going on there. I just want to say that we stand Black communities worldwide matter. And I just want to say that if you're somebody who's feeling despair, if you're feeling marginalized, that as writers, we are all here to say that your stories are worth telling, they're worth writing, and they're worth reading. Woo! That was weird. I did not expect to cry, but just that your stories, I firmly believe that all stories are worth telling and worth reading. So there you go. So what we're going to do, I'm going to introduce each author, and I'm going to read their bios. One of my favorite things to do is to cobble together author biographies for events. I really like celebrating other people. So, and then we'll have some questions that we got from some of the registrants that I have here. And yeah, welcome. So first up, we have Janie Chang. Born in Taiwan, Janie Chang has lived in the Philippines, Iran, Thailand, New Zealand, and Canada. She writes historical fiction with a personal connection, drawing from family history and ancestral stories. She is a graduate of the Writers Studio program at Simon Fraser University. Her books include Three Souls, a finalist for the Ethel Wilson Fiction Prize, and Dragon Springs Road, a national bestseller. Both were nominated for the International Dublin Literary Award. Recently, Library Journal had this lovely thing to say about her brand new novel, The Library of Legends. Janie Chang has created a lovely novel that is both joyful and lighthearted and deeply tragic as she explores a culture and people who are forced to accept that their community will never be the same following the war and the departure of the spirits that protected their land for centuries. Everyone, please welcome Janie Chang. Hi, Janie.
Hey, Jen. Am I supposed to say something now?
Yes, you can read now. Sorry, I muted myself for a second. Go ahead.
Okay. So my book, The Library of Legends, is about students at a Chinese university escaping war while protecting a priceless collection of books with romance, political intrigue, betrayal, and mythology thrown in. My father was a student refugee. He was at university in Nanjing when his campus evacuated ahead of the Japanese occupation. So this story means more to me than just history, it's family history. So first, I'd like to read the poem that's the epigraph to the novel, because many readers have commented on how these few lines of poetry echo their own feelings during this time of uncertainty. And the lines are from a poem called Spring View by the Tang Dynasty poet Du Fu, who lived during the 8th century. Though the country is broken, hills and streams endure, and in the city, spring comes again to trees and grasses. But flowers shed fearful tears, and desolate birds sing the sorrows of parting. Beacon fires have burned for 3 months now, and letters from home are worth 10,000 pieces of gold. Okay. Now, on to the students of Minghua University who are on the road at this point in the story. Lian is the main character and Mei Rong is her classmate. They were billeted in an ancestral hall belonging to the largest clan in the village. Minghua students filled all 4 of the buildings around the small courtyard, as well as the dining hall and servants' quarters. Lian was so tired she could hardly wait to fall onto the bedroll she'd spread out on the hard slate floor. Meirong was already sound asleep, curled into a tight ball, blanket pulled over her head to block the sunlight streaming through the carved window shutters. It would be like this every day from now on, Lian realized as she drifted into exhausted sleep. Walking by moonlight and starlight to avoid aerial attacks, sleeping in temples and ancestral halls when no other buildings could house them all. That evening, the university set out again after sundown for their second night on the road. Meirong walked beside Lian. After sleeping beside each other on the floor, she now referred to Lian as her roommate. There was so much knowledge collected in the original encyclopedia, Meirong said. All those volumes of poetry, epic histories, and scholarly essays. Why do you suppose the gods chose to save only the volumes of legends and folklore? I thought it was the scholar bureaucrat Yao and his descendants who saved the Library of Legends, Lian said. She was starting to feel comfortable with Meirong, with the way her new friend changed the subject suddenly, her mind busy as a dragonfly, darting from one thought to another. Well, what I think is this, Miron said, continuing as if she hadn't heard. Maybe it's because legends are truer to our natures than serious literature. Maybe myths and legends reveal more about us than poetry or epic histories. Very perceptive, Miss Yi, Professor Kang said as he walked up from behind. Myths are the darkest and brightest incarnations of who we are. They slip into our dreams and underpin our reality. Perhaps that's why the gods judge the library of legends worthy of special protection. Although the professor's age and status entitled him to ride on a cart, he always walked a few miles each day, using that time to chat with students up and down the line. Or it could be even simpler, he continued. Maybe the gods are vain and want their stories remembered. He strode ahead, chuckling to himself.
Thank you so much, Janie. I was thinking really hard about your novels this week, and one of the things that I admire most about them is this sort of integration of so many different elements. You've got history and myth and family, and lots of sort of deep human connection and emotion. So my question is, do your ideas typically begin with one of these things, or is it all of them all at once? You don't think about those elements separately?
I generally begin with finding a period in history, a time of transition or conflict, because in fiction you need to have conflict. And of course, if you're selecting from early 20th century Chinese history, there's so much to choose from. So it's not hard finding a human story, even if it's only ordinary people trying to negotiate their way through a time of change. And then, I don't know what it is, at some point, organically, something of the supernatural manages to nose its way in. In this particular case with the Library of Legends, I was doing my research and actually came across an account of a university that actually did carry with them the contents of an old imperial library, trying to save it from destruction and from being stolen by the Japanese. And it just seemed like suddenly everything fell into place for me, because that library was so emblematic of cultural history and legacy, sort of the intangible asset of knowledge that the university was trying to preserve, not just the minds of their young people, but also Chinese heritage. And then as I kept on thinking and writing, it became really clear to me that the library had a bigger role to play than simply being luggage, being carried along the way, that the supernatural beings, the spirit guardians of China that were described within the stories in the Library of Legends, they had a role to play in the book too, in coming alive, in being part of a parallel exodus from China. And it was just so much metaphor going on there. I couldn't keep it out. So.
Well, no, I mean, it's like when you read about that library or hear about the library, it's like the best idea ever. Like, how can you not want to write a novel about that, right?
And it was true. Like readers are always saying, but was there really a library? And I'm telling you, the history of that library is worth its own novel, but another time.
That's your next novel. It's fine. It's just the next novel. You can bang that out. It's no big deal. Thank you so much, Janie. We're going to hear from David Lee next. And David Lee is the author of the poetry collection Mythical Man and the chapbook Stubbleburn. His poetry has appeared in Prism International, Arc Poetry Magazine, the Thames Review, and elsewhere. He is the poetry editor of this magazine and sits on the editorial collective of Schuster Press. In a recent article that I really enjoyed, Open Book said that Mythical Man explores themes of masculinity, sexuality, race, and personal identity, shattering preconceived notions about who we are and who we think we ought to be. An exciting and thought-provoking examination of what the idea of masculinity means in this day and age. Mythical Man serves as both a vivid sensory joyride and a whip-smart deconstruction of gender norms. Now that is quite a description. So everybody, please welcome David Lee. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me today, guys. That was a lovely reading, Janie. Oh, you guys are all muted. Yeah, Jen gave a really good introduction to the work. So I'll just dive in and read. I got 6 poems here, and we'll just go in. Boy. Surrounded by white wolves, I plunge a hand into the alpha's mouth and rip out its tongue. The rest scatter in whimpers. It's not long before I begin to tear at myself from fear of what I'm becoming. Crawl into the forest to hide under a blanket of shimmering silver moths. This one's called Nod and Be Polite. Being unnecessarily reminded to say hi to Grandpa again. Arm unnecessarily grabbed and shoulder slapped again. Hearing nostalgic stories about Vietnam again. Asked when I will get a girlfriend again. Reminding Grandpa that I won't ever have one again. Being told how going to Vietnam for a wife is the norm again. Here, I'm from here. This one is called Where Are You Really From? A question I'm sure we've all have been asked. Where are you really from? Sent to ESL class in 5th grade. Went home to finish Harry Potter on the love seat. Told to learn about the Irish potato famine through an early reader's book. Read about red-eared slider turtles in bed out of curiosity. Failed math tests to everyone's surprise. Finished spelling tests the quickest. Memories recalled because they ceased to mummify. Ice melts in the champagne bucket while he waits. Nice to meet you. This poem is not exotic. This poem is not exotic. These letters are not exotic. These words are not exotic. This poem is not exotic. This poem is not exotic. This mouth is not exotic. This voice is not exotic. This poem is not exotic. This poem is not exotic. Mythical Man 2. We press against each other so hard that I should just admit I want to be absorbed into you. Our atoms amalgamating until we become a hydra, writhing with 100 hissing heads poised to strike. But the harder I try to inhabit this idea, the more I know of its futility. Eventually, each head will be sliced off, tar black blood kissing the hilt of my sword. I'll need to cauterize each wound to prevent our dreams from regrowing, distractions from the real magic that makes us powerful on our own. This is the last one I'm going to read. State of Man. With a stone loaded in my slingshot, I pull back taut and aim at the chest of a statue I chiseled in his likeness. Petrified, deceptively gentle, the softness in his brow welcoming me, his arms enticing me to safety. When I release, launching the stone that shatters him into a cloud of marbled dust, he clears the way for me to walk in a world that is better grounded in reality, not constructed on a foundation that equates my worth with how I worship.
Thank you. That makes me so happy, those poems. There are lots of different themes in this collection, you know, desirability, the urban landscape, all sorts of things. Oddly enough, the one thing that I connect to the most is your use of animals or the creepy crawlies. So my question to you is, what is your connection to what I call slithery, scaly things? Like, what does that mean to you?
I think I've always had a long fascination with animals and the slithery, scaly things that you said. I think to me, they offer the best kind of imagery for me to easily access. I find it really easy for me to draw inspiration and really write an image out with those. I'm a very imaginative writer in person. So those things, to me, they hold a lot of, I guess, meaning to me, and in the way, and like just the ties these certain animals that I've used in the book, snakes and beetles and all sorts of creepy crawly things that you said. And yeah, it's just, yeah, I think it boils down to them making kind of good imagery for me. And that's, for me, what I strive for in a poem, to build like really vivid imagery and make it a sensory joyride, like you said.
Yeah, it was. Well, it is a vivid sensory joyride, and I actually think, when books come out and I see their covers, the cover for your book is so beautifully perfect for what it is, for the creepy crawly things. There's like, do you have a copy of it?
Oh, I do.
Mine's
Here it
downstairs.
is.
Yee, scales. There it is.
Yeah.
Mythical Man.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, David.
Hmm.
So next we have Lindsay Wong. Lindsay Wang is the author of the best-selling debut memoir, The Woo Woo: How I Survived Ice Hockey, Drug Raids, Demons, and My Crazy Chinese Family. Her book won the 2019 Hubert Evans Nonfiction Prize, and it was a finalist for the 2018 Hilary Weston Prize, the 2019 edition of Canada Reads, and longlisted for the 2019 Stephen Leacock Medal in Humor. It was also named a Best Book of 2018 by the Quill Enquirer, a 2018 CBC Best Nonfiction Book, and a 2018 Globe 100, and a 2018 Best Book by Newsweek. Her young adult debut, which I think is coming out like Monday, My Summer of Love and Misfortune, is being released this week of the Woo Woo. The Quill Enquirer had this to say. This is one of my favorite reviews of this book. Wong's writing sparkles with energy and wit, punctuating almost every scene with a sly, sharp gallows humor. The characters in The Woo Woo are at once multifaceted and fragile, strong enough to survive the bleakness of their lives while also hampered by cultural and familial beliefs. So everyone, yay, Lindsay Wong. Hi, Lindsay.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. Janie, David, that was amazing. So I'm going to read a little bit from My Summer of Love and Misfortune, which comes out on Tuesday. And it's a book about this imperfect Chinese American teen who kind of fails everything, and her parents decide to send her away to Beijing. And there she gets in a lot of trouble, eats a lot of food, and she meets this really hot tutor. And so it's sort of like a fun summer adventure. Yeah, so I'm going to just read the dedication and the first chapter. This book is dedicated to the very best and worst disaster that I know, myself, and also to anyone who's ever felt that they never belonged to any particular people, purpose, or place. I see you and I salute you, and I promise that you'll be 85% okay one day in this scary, tumultuous, and glittering world. One flower heart. I, Iris Wong, was born to be unlucky. This is because I was born in the year of the tiger, and everyone in our Chinese family knows that girls born in tiger year are bad luck. A flower-hearted tiger girl, such as yours truly, means that I'm destined to pick loser boys and never listen to my parents. A flower heart is someone who shows up hungover to her SATs and half-asses her college admission essays. She's also addicted to Starbucks lattes, expensive makeup, and super fun parties. But a tiger son born into the family is supposed to make a lot of money and bring honor to his family name. Total sexist bullshit, am I right? Maybe that superstition existed in China in the time of Confucius, but not in 21st century America, where Siri and iPhones practically run our lives. Can I tell you an embarrassing and hideous secret? When I was born, I was covered with thick, abundant hair all over my entire body, like I was an actual tiger cub. According to my parents, I even had coarse hairs growing on my chin, forehead, and cheeks. My mom likes to joke that I looked exactly like a hairball spat out by a designer cat. My dad says that 2 weeks before I was born, he dreamed that my mom had given birth to a tiger cub, but he's deeply superstitious. He's the kind of guy who checks with a feng shui master before buying a painting for the house or making a new friend. My dad is born in the year of the goat, so he believes that anyone who isn't a farm animal, like his tiger daughter, i.e. me, brings him bad luck. Before he could propose to my mom, who's a zodiac dog, he consulted the Chinese almanac. Then he hired a Chinese monk to work out the math and interview his future bride. When my mom told him she was going to give birth to a tiger, he was extremely worried. A dog and goat for parents are no match for a tiger, he exclaimed. When he found out that his tiger cub was going to be a girl, I think he actually cried from anxiety. Anyway, I was lucky that a lot of my facial hair fell off by kindergarten, but it doesn't explain the gross, extremely long, mustache-like hairs that sometimes appear when I'm super stressed. These hairs sprout above my upper lip and even grow out of my ears. I swear, those hairs are like my whiskers. Thank God for the invention of hair wax and affordable laser treatment. Without just Lux near wax-ready strips, I don't think I could ever be seen in public during times of great personal duress. That, and I have to blame my bad luck on my sometimes too loving, overprotective parents. As soon as I was born, they took me to a famous fortune teller who was visiting from China to ask her how to fix my life trajectory. It all went wrong from the very beginning. You see, the fortune teller, Madame Xing, found a funny shaped mole under my right eye and said it looked like a teardrop, like I was born to be permanently crying. This flower heart is no good, she announced to my parents after a quick examination. My mom and dad were probably horrified and praying that they could send me back to the hospital and switch me for a tiger boy. It also didn't help that I was one of those babies who was always crying and puking everywhere. My mom said that I just barfed on Madame Xing's mink fur, and she got flustered and started cussing nonstop. My dad swears that this was bad luck, as it offended a powerful fortune teller who must have put a double curse on me. After our first and only fortune telling session, Madame Xing cryptically said, "Keep both eyes on your tiger daughter. If you take one eye off, she will bring shame on your family with her weak flower heart." Whatever she said was true. Since I was born, I guess I was destined to be a flower heart. I have a weakness for terrible choices and terrible boys. This brings me to my current situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Both my mother and my son are tigers, and I feel like I know what that's like. My son was also born covered in hair. This is a true story. That little fur, yes. So what really fascinates me about sort of your body of work is that you've been writing all these different genres, like memoir, young adult, fiction. I know you've done a little bit of like television writing also. So when you're looking at all these different writing, how do they connect for you? Is it a theme? I do see a lot of you write, but I wanted to ask you how they all sort of together for you, sort of in your brain as a like a practice of writing.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been interested in sort of telling a story. It doesn't really matter what genre or what form, whether it be maybe television or YA or fiction. But I think, I mean, if you look at I guess if I look at my work, I think I'm always writing about family and identity and belonging and sort of not knowing where either me or a character is from, and they're always, I think they're searching for a place, or they're searching for their own tribe of people, and I think that's a theme I think has been really resonating so far. I guess I would say I do write a lot about Chinese culture, superstition especially, maybe because it was my upbringing. I think that's something that I'm continuing to grapple with, and coming of age is really important to me.
Yeah, I love the stuff about the superstition. My mother also is very superstitious, so I feel a huge connection to your writing in that way. So thank you, Lindsay. So we have some time. So people who registered early for this session, some of you sent us some questions. So I have some questions here. And I have a really good question here from Tanya. Tanya, I hope you're here. Hi, Tanya. As a writer of color, I go back and forth between wanting to see and write the cultural aspects of my heritage on the page and wanting to just write brown characters who don't need to represent their culture at all because it's not the main thing about them. What does the conversation about this look like in your head as you write? Tanya also adds, we never ask white authors to write more about their culture, but I've been asked to do this several times. David, do you want to take that on? I can hear you.
I think it's as simple as that. It's like, it's just because I'm a writer of color, of Asian descent, doesn't mean I have to write about that. For me, it's equally as important to me to write about other facets of myself besides my Asian heritage. Though that plays like a really, there's threads of that in my book, and of course I would touch upon them when talking about identity and masculinity, especially the masculinity of Asian men. But again, it's not the only facet of my experience as a person. So yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just I don't have to write about being Asian all the time.
No, you don't. You absolutely do not have to all the time.
Yeah.
Janie, did you have any thoughts about this? Because your books are so grounded in like Chinese history, so that might be something that you'd have, this kind of question about writing about culture.
Well, my feeling is that I do not write consciously thinking about representation. For me, I write about Chinese history because, I grew up in a Western school system and learned almost next to nothing about Chinese history. So I'm learning about this as I research, and I'm also aware that some of my audience is also learning about Chinese history as they read my books. I get emails from Chinese Canadians who grew up here, and they're saying, wow, I've never heard about any of this. So for me, I think what I try to do is provide enough context so that people who are not familiar with Chinese history and culture understand why when something happens, how it affects people, why you can't have an early 20th century Chinese girl be all 21st century feminist, because the conditions simply did not exist in those days. And if there was any sort of rebellion or some wanting to find a way to stake her own role in life, she had to go about it in a much different way than we are able to now. So no, I don't write consciously with representation in mind. I really write to try and inform myself and to inform the audience about what it was like to live in China in those days, because that actually then feeds into current events. It just amazes me how much the mistakes of history have formed the situations that exist now. Is Jen still there?
There's just such a delay, I think.
Okay.
I think. Oh, it looks like Jen dropped off, it says.
It's the dog's fault, I'm sure of it.
Hear me? I think my Wi-Fi's been a bit wonky, so I think I'm here.
We can hear you.
Your audio's here, your lovely face is not.
Hi. Hi. I actually did hear a lot of it. It was kind of coming in and out. Thank you, Janie, for that. Wi-Fi is great. Online events are fascinatingly lovely. Okay, so I have another question here from May. What motivated you to start your writing journey? Did you have another life before becoming a writer? That's a good question. I didn't have much of a life before becoming a writer. So Lindsay, do you want to take that one on?
Sure.
What were you doing? Yeah.
So I would say I've always not had another life. I went to school for writing. uh, it was one degree after another degree. A lot of I did a lot of different jobs like tutoring, but it was always in the purpose of so I could be a writer. I still have many jobs, as many writers do. The gig economy is not my friend, but I want it to be my friend. So I've just been doing that. I do teaching, I do editing, whatever pays the bills. But other than that, I'm always just writing. I'm thinking books, I'm thinking story. Um, yeah, I think, that's one way of doing it. But I think a lot of people have interesting lives before becoming a writer.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I think I know Janie had a whole other career before becoming a writer, right, Janie? Am I right?
Yeah, so I have a degree in computer science and I had like 25 years in the tech industry, but I always wanted to write and was one of those people who said, one day I'm going to write a book. But what got my butt in gear was my mother's dementia got to the point where we had to move her into care. And every time I went to visit, I'd look around and I'd wonder how many of these people are wishing that they had done more to achieve their dream. And that really kicked my butt to do things. Plus, although being kind of nerdy, being in high tech was a good career. After a while, it just becomes soul destroying, not being able to follow something that you really, really want to do. And I just got to tell you, the first time my husband read my first completed manuscript for my first novel, he said, "Wow, this is really good, honey. You should have done this 20 years ago." And I'm going to tell you, that was a very marriage limiting moment.
Oh, that's funny. Should have done it 20 years ago. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but
Okay.
sure, like who paid the mortgage? Come on.
Yeah. I have a question here from one of our registrants named David, also named David. And the
Hi,
question is,
David.
hi, David. And the question is, Crazy Rich Asians, The Funeral, Parasite, how is the rise of Asian cinema changing things for Asian writers? This is a great question, actually, because I think all of the different forms of culture and media are always connected. David, did you want to answer David?
I think for me, it's just nice seeing Asians on screen. Actually, there's a lot in my writing. I do reference pop culture a lot, so I think going forward now, the more that we see films like that come up and shows like that, I think it would inform my writing more. Just like, yeah, it's just nice being seen and that there's actually an audience out there who wants to see this, right? And I guess how it informs my writing, it's like, oh, there's hope.
I think I would just add that I think there is something really magical about representation. And if so like I'm 43, so when I was younger, the representation didn't exist.
Yeah.
There was pretty much just Yick on Degrassi Junior High, and that was it for me. And I never knew what kind of Asian Yick was because I don't think they ever really said. And it was, yeah, he's just generic, or Long Duck Dong, right? So I think there's magic in representation because it helps those who are younger and creative believe that their stories are worth writing and worth telling, and it helps them do that. Lindsay, I know that you've done some writing for television, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on this, on the rise in sort of Asian faces and Asian stories in our television and movies.
So before Crazy Rich Asians came out, a TV agent was like, I like your book, but I don't know if people are going to be interested in buying it, right? As soon as it came out, the people started to be interested in like, oh, we can actually do this type of book. And my book was actually optioned to an American company. But before, Crazy Rich Asians, I think they were kind of afraid to touch the type of story I had, which was about a dysfunctional Chinese family. And so I think, just having that it be possible, I think that's something, Hollywood is starting to look at in film and movies as well. Even with my Summer of Love and Misfortune, it's kind of compared to a Crazy Rich Asian. So I think, there is it has started this idea of looking at, you know, Asian Canadians and Asian Americans in a different light.
Oh, I think Jen dropped off again.
Well,
Okay,
yeah.
well, I mean, I'm just going to jump in here because for me, what I've always wondered about was there was such a huge gap of time between like the first movie that came out that really featured Asians, that was Joy Luck Club, right? The book and the movie. And that was so long ago. And then I think the next big one that hit was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right? Which is a costume drama. And now finally, I feel as though there's a clutch of popular movies. And what I find really encouraging about this is that maybe it will motivate non-Asians to seek out more work because it's piqued their curiosity, sort of in much the same way that as a writer of historical fiction, we really love it when people say, you know, I didn't know anything about this period of history, but I read your novel and then I went and looked up the nonfiction references and books about that period of history. Oh, and that thing about being seen, I'm going to tell you, Amy Tan's book, Joy Luck Club, it absolutely terrified me. I did not feel seen. I felt stalked. I thought that woman was like peeping in on my life. But it was wonderful.
Actually, you know, that's funny. I wrote a thing about the Joy Luck Club recently and about how like I never really loved it as much as other people did, but I really felt seen when I found out that she dressed up in like BDSM leather and fronted a rock band. That's when I felt really seen. We're coming to the end of our event, and I would like to say a few things before my Wi-Fi you know, craps out again. I just want to thank our authors, Janie Chang, David Lee, and Lindsay Wong. I want to thank the Vancouver Writers Fest for hosting this great event for Asian Heritage Month. And I just want to add that the festival has other online events coming up, including an evening to celebrate some of the BC and Yukon Book Prize nominated authors on June 17th. So please do keep checking the Vancouver Writers Fest website for more information. I also want to thank Leslie Herdig and Clea and Lauren at the Vancouver Writers Fest for helping us set this up and being so great and so nurturing. And thanks to everybody for coming. I can't see you, but I know you're there. And thank you so much, everybody, and enjoy your Sunday today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.